You talk about the war. You talk about Mitchell and the rest, but you didn't know them. They were my friends. I watched them die, one by one. For years afterwards, whenever I saw Earth-Minbari, I had to fight the urge to strangle them with my bare hands. All I could see was Mitchell and the rest. Dying. Dying.
Why?
Because we were outnumbered and outgunned. We never had a chance. You say we could have won, but you weren't there. You didn't see them. When I looked at those ships, I didn't just see my death. I saw the death of the whole damn human race.
Then why did they surrender?
I don't know. Maybe the universe blinked. Maybe God changed his mind. All I know is that we got a second chance.
And in 10 years, nothing's ever made you doubt your story that you blacked out. Is that it?
No. Nothing. Except...
Oh, I have a PSA before we start the episode. This is very important. I remembered where the people have their hearts in their butts. Definitely remembered. I was driving down the road and I was like, there it is. I got it. It's from the episode of Angel when they go to that alternate demon dimension where Lauren is from.
Okay.
And Angel can be out in the sunlight. Anyway, they have to try to kill him. They're like, you have to stab him in the heart. You have to stake him in the heart. And they're like, I just stick him in the butt because their hearts are in their butts.
Okay.
And I don't know why that lived in my mind, but no other context did. But that did. So anyway, that cleared that up.
Not Babylon 5.
Someday I will watch all of Angel. She says, not really thinking that's ever going to happen. I watched the parts that I really liked. And then when it got weird, I was like, and out. So anyway, getting me to watch new media is a problem. And yes, Angel counts as new media.
Counts as new media. Yeah.
Anything after like 2001 counts as new. You really have to like hold me. You have to chain me to the chair and put it on. Like in Next, that movie with Nicolas Cage, where he can see 2 minutes into the future and they prop his eyes open. That's how you have to get me to watch new shit. All right. So, hi, I'm Rachel.
And I'm Matt.
And this is
We Are All Kosh.
a Babylon 5 rewatch. Should we change it to fan cast?
What?
I don't know. I've been seeing other people do TV show rewatches and they call them fan casts. And I'm like, well, I'm rewatching the show, so it's a rewatch. I don't know. I feel like if our marketing strategy was anything other than, how did I describe it to somebody the other day? Our marketing strategy is like, I take a picture and hang it up on the wall in my own house and I leave the door open, but I don't invite anybody over.
Yeah.
Anyway,
The
if
front
you're
porch
here,
light is on.
yeah, I know. Like in trick or treating, right? You know, you can come in. If you love our show, we're so glad you found us. And maybe like tell one other person. I don't know. I feel like word of mouth is, I get so exhausted by ads that it's really hard for me to generate ads. I'm like, I don't even like
I don't want to
seeing it.
inflict that on someone else.
Plus there's some backlash sometimes when you take the opportunity to plug yourself. Because even though sometimes people are kind of asking for that, they're not. And it's really hard for me to tell when. And so I just kind of, I don't know, tell a friend. Okay, tell two friends. And then tell those friends to tell two friends. And then, you know, maybe we'll get a sponsor. What should we be sponsored by? Kate and Hannah want to be sponsored by one of the furniture companies, Joybird, so that they can get free furniture.
Okay, what product do I want personally?
We could be sponsored by one of our hosting services. That would be great. In fact, We do have an affiliate link down in the show notes for Riverside. I don't think anybody's ever actually used it to sign up, but it's down there. Anyway, back to the episode. We're going to talk about Babylon 5 Season 1, Episode 8, and the Sky Full of Stars. And this title actually has a reason.
Yeah, from a different episode.
Yeah, it's from The Gathering when Sinclair is talking about being on the line. And he says, the sky was full of stars and every star an exploding ship. One of ours. The Battle of the Line is, to me, one of the best creations of this entire show. The lore of the Battle of the Line. The fact that humanity was on the brink of destruction. We were on the brink of complete annihilation because the Minbari were like, well, clearly you don't play nice with others, so we're just going to go ahead and remove you from the playground. Okay?
Before you become a bigger problem.
And it's important to note that at no point were the Minbari ever threatened by us.
No.
Literally not even a little bit.
I was reading through some trivia.
Yeah.
And collecting pieces of information throughout the series, we find out there were approximately 20,000 ships on the Battle of the Line, and 200 ships survived.
Yeah, it is.
So the Minbari wiped out 99%
yes.
of like the human ships,
yes.
fighter pilots.
Yes. After basically starting on the outside, on the very outside edge of human space and working their way in and killing their way in towards the center. Mm-hmm. It is a moment of storytelling brilliance to have created this singular event that can generate so much lore and world building and mystery and compelling content for the rest of the show. And I think Sinclair might be the only one we interact with who was on the line. I don't know. I'm probably going to get corrected. If you haven't figured it out yet, I am interested in the prose and the characters.
Vibes.
And the nitty gritty details of like how the ship is laid out and other parts of that I'm not always going to be the best at. Like, yes, as someone pointed out, Sinclair does in fact have a desk on the command and control area. It's directly to the right of the door. I think of it as like his playpen because every time he's on there, he's in
it
the
looks like you stuck the kids all at their own kids' table.
It's kind of like when you give your kid a fake phone that just has buttons and makes beep boop sounds. They're like, do you want to go stand by your desk? Okay, beep boop boop, beep boop boop. And it just has like 5 screens it rotates through that make it feel like he's not. I know he's up there doing stuff. My God, of course I know that. But he's standing there when they're having that conversation with Garibaldi, where Garibaldi's trying to get him to go talk to the interviewer from Interstellar Network News. It's like his spot on the whatever, but it's also kind of a flex space. Sometimes people will use it who don't have a permanent space on the whatever command and control. It's fine. If I miss stuff like that, it happens. Feel free to correct me. I'm going to be way more up on the quotes than I'm ever going to be on the exact location of things in the ship. That's what Matt is here for. And sometimes he feels like he can correct me, and sometimes I'm on a roll and he's just like, it's fine. So, whatever. We're here for the vibes. I hope you're here for the vibes. We love this show. That's the whole point of this. So, anyway, and I wanted to point out also that we haven't mentioned it, but Babylon 5's use of CG, like the way they integrated CG into the episode, was revolutionary at the time. Looking at it now, you're like, wow, that's a lot of shitty CG. But when you were watching this in 1994, you're like, wow, the way that they used real people and CG together like this is pretty cool. And I love how they offset the cost, because this particular episode uses quite a bit of CG. And then when we're not using it, we're literally like just dramatic lighting on the characters. So they didn't have to create any additional sets. They didn't have to.
Like the council room of the Grey Council.
Yeah. We get one long shot where we see that it's like this projector room, and they stand underneath this like central thing.
Yeah.
pillar thing. And other than that, no, it's a spotlight on people in robes. Like,
there's
it's
a ring
great.
of spotlights.
It's great because it's drama. It's
focusing on all the relevant visual
it gives
details.
you everything you need, and they only had to wheel like wheel a spotlight out and shine it on the people, and that's it. And it's an excellent example of economy done right.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to give Babylon 5 kudos for that, because it's really hard to go back and see how revolutionary a thing was when it first happened.
Yeah, you can't watch it again for the first time.
You can't watch it again for the first time. And you can't watch this with 1990 eyes. You just can't. But if you can bear in mind that this show was really cool when it first aired, it kind of helps you set the tone for why it has so much endearing popularity, despite the fact that some of it now feels a little bit aged. Because we start with our Babylon 5 exterior shot. I feel like this is what we're establishing as a pattern for these episodes, is we do an exterior shot and then we cut to customs, and wouldn't you know it, the bad guy's arriving on the station.
With a big knife in his bag.
with yet another big knife. We're going to talk about Garibaldi continuously falling social stock in my mind in this episode.
He's just not doing a great job.
He's just not really doing
Why do the scanners not catch? Maybe this blade is ceramic
what I
and
love,
not metal.
I feel like, I don't know if it's me and the types of shows that I watch, but the fact that cop propaganda in the 90s was like cops, but maybe not actually doing their job. Because we watched all of Forever Night, where he's supposed to be a detective, and he investigates the actual murder like 30% of the time. And the rest of the time, he's just fucking around chasing women and having existential crises. And that's kind of what it feels like Garibaldi is doing. He's reading the newspaper, he's delegating, and pretty much not a whole lot else. Like, it's fine. This isn't a Garibaldi hate episode. This is we love things by realizing the truth of them, and realizing the truth that, like, I would be personally terrified to be on Babylon 5, because in the last couple of months, there's been 8 attacks on aliens. Someone was able to just, in like 50% of the last, we're only 8 episodes into the series, and in half of the episodes, people have just gotten cards to get into secure areas just by like paying a guy on the street.
Yeah, or they have knives, guns, or knives and guns.
At this point, I think they must sell access cards to the ambassadorial wing in the Zocalo. Like, there's a booth. They're like, who do you want to go see? Oh, Delenn? Oh, I got 2 of those. You're in luck. They're low stock. And everybody gets knives on this ship. Everybody has guns, even though they're not supposed to have guns. You know what hasn't come back? Dust.
He's really cracking down on the drugs.
Yeah, we're cracking. We've Nancy Reagan'd our way. We've just said no to drugs, but we can't seem to just say no to weapons.
Maybe the sensor technology is much better at picking up drugs.
Yeah, I blame Reagan.
Like the traces of dust.
But nothing else.
But scanning for novel materials in the shape of knives.
Yeah, we can't
is
do that.
Lagging behind.
Novel materials. They're metal knives. They're just regular. They're not even.
They
like,
look metal.
Okay.
But we don't know.
They're not even fold up knives or anything. They're literally like, I had this strapped to my
blade.
hip when I came in. Anyway, so our bad guy is arriving at customs, and he looks over at somebody else in customs, and they like do like bro nod at each other, and oh, wouldn't you know it, they're together.
Yeah.
That's
and
the
this
opening
guy,
scene.
The first time I saw this guy in this episode, I was like, is that Jim Caviezel? No, that's not Jim Caviezel. But where have I seen this guy? This guy looks really familiar. He's Khan's right-hand man in Wrath of Khan.
Yeah, I think he's the sci-fi that guy.
Yeah, he's in a bunch of stuff.
Because I recognized him, but I couldn't tell. I was like, isn't he in Battlestar Galactica? And Matt looked it up, and he was like, no. I think that's the hair, honestly.
Yeah.
The 70s hair he's rocking.
That fits.
Yeah, he does feel like Rent-A-Con. Like, he definitely, I get it. I can see how we were both like, I think we know who these people are, but we couldn't find anything that we would really have known them from, except for.
Yeah.
But he's even uncredited
Yeah, he's
in
not
Wrath
even
of Khan,
credited
yeah.
in Wrath of Khan.
And then we get Sinclair walking around the station. It's a little bit slice of life right at the beginning. It's like people arriving in customs, meeting their friend in customs, Sinclair on like a walkabout. And he nods at the security officer. And then, the security officer gets grabbed by these bad dudes and like slammed against the wall in public, like just in the middle of this busy corridor where people are walking by. And they're like, "Hey, Benson, Tex wants his money." He's like, "Oh, I got it. I'm going to get it. I have it for you tomorrow. The check's in the mail. And he's like, "Yeah, okay. Well, you said that yesterday. And so you have 24 hours or we're going to cut your head off." Okay. I mean, that's not how you get your money back, but I get it. You can make an example, but it's pretty bold that they think they can just kill a security officer.
Right.
And that's going to be A-okay. Again, I have to question, how does security work on this station? It does not
safe
appear
is
to.
it really?
It feels a little wild, wild west. I don't know. Like, I get that Sinclair hired Garibaldi because they're old bros. Garibaldi's not actually a bad dude. He just needed another chance. But I'm starting to question whether he actually needed another chance.
He needs like a co-security lead where
He's going to get one eventually.
Garibaldi can be more investigative
Yeah.
and responsive to things. And like Garibaldi's a good guy to have in the crisis to respond to the crisis, but you need somebody else who sets up the systems that prevent crises from happening in the first place.
Yeah. It's fine. It's a sign of the times, honestly.
Yeah.
Of the times for you would not have questioned this when you were watching it the first time, because your level of critical thinking about like, wow, this seems to keep happening over and over again was a little lower because you didn't binge television shows.
Right,
You weren't expecting novelty.
I guess, retain Garibaldi's like respectability.
Yeah.
By putting a little more story into explaining how the bad guys work around
Yeah.
the security
Yeah.
systems. But if they're just walking straight through the regular customs line and not getting detected on any scanners,
Yeah.
and like, okay.
It's fine. It's fine. You know what it is? It's a sign of the times in Babylon 5 land, too, because we are now facing a level of security threat that was never expected to occur. We weren't expecting the Home Guard. We weren't expecting to have the actual,
whoever these guys are,
the actual maybe Earth government coming after the commander of Babylon 5. These were things that, I mean, nobody briefed Garibaldi on this. No one was like, listen, Sinclair's a problem. He's going to be attracting a lot of really weird dudes, okay? They were like, I don't know, maybe you're going to have to stop some guns. Maybe you're going to have to stop some drugs and, just maybe keep people from getting killed. Like, that was probably his job description.
Brain scanned.
Yeah. Again. Like, this is probably that was his briefing. He wasn't expecting the ambassador of the Narn government to almost be assassinated, so he wasn't looking for pain givers. He found a couple of knives. He has found knives. I don't know how they found the knife that the guy was using to open his Amazon box, but they found it. Clearly after it had been snuggled on the station, but they found it.
Well, in that case, I was thinking it might have been just manufactured on the station.
Yeah, there could be. And I mean, there's a lot happening here. There's a larger world than we're privy to. So you can kind of headcanon. It would be a lot worse if Garibaldi wasn't doing his job.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we end up at a berth, like one of the renter rooms. And I love the variety in the renter rooms, but also how dingy they are. This is some dingy shit, man. Like the hallway outside.
It's very well lit.
Is not well lit.
But this room full of boxes.
No, this is the
this
berth.
Is a different one.
This is the like capsule hotel that Night 1 and Night 2. That's their only names, by the way. The guys that arrived on customs, Night 1 and Night 2, are staying in this hotel room that has like a little kitchen and then 2 capsule style beds that stick back into the wall.
It's an extended stay apartment.
Yeah,
or a hotel room.
But then the hallway outside, when Sinclair escapes and goes into the hallway outside, is very. They didn't pay a lot for this room, is what it feels like. It's an odd mix of You're thinking, okay, there's ambassadors on this station. This must be like a bougie, like
A bougie space station.
whatever. But it's like the ambassadors and the not, like the very not. And there's not like we haven't seen the middle class section, I guess, of Babylon 5 yet.
I guess the permanent residents.
Yeah. This station's only been open a year. Have they not cleaned in a
Like,
year?
what does Benson's room look like?
Yeah.
Like permanent staff.
Right. Well, we know what Garibaldi's room looks like, and it's pretty similar to the ambassadors. But anyway, I digress. They had to reuse a lot of hallways, and sometimes reusing certain hallways that are either like Brown sector, I think, is where most of the unhoused people live. And so we get a lot of that, and then they reuse those areas, and it ends up making the whole place feel a little grungy, which is kind of interesting. I think it's supposed to be texture, and I think the texture is overstated because it's supposed to be visible on a CRT screen.
Right.
And then now we're getting it in high definition. And
it changes the vibe a lot.
It's kind of like if you took a black and white movie and you were actually able to see the colors that they used. A lot of times the colors are not corresponding to what you think. Like they use dark green a lot for lipstick because it looked better.
Yeah.
So if you were to actually see the colors of what they were wearing, it would look really weird because they were never expecting you to see the colors. They were never expecting you to see this level of detail. And so in my mind, that's how I'm going to frame it. But the doorbell rings at this berth, and night 2 answers the door for night 1. Or maybe the other way around. I can't remember which one's. One of the knights opens the door for the other knights, but he pulls a knife out of his carry-on bag first, and it is a fixed blade knife. It's like a 12-inch long fixed blade knife. And he's like, come in. And the guy opens the door, and once again, he just had his knife in his little like toiletry bag.
Yeah, his little carry-on bag.
Yeah. And not only that, but they had the components for an entire chair full of electronics just in their bag. One time I went to visit my grandma and we flew up to go visit her. And I took an entire carry-on bag full of my Nintendo 64, all of the controllers, the cords, and my games. And I got stopped and swabbed for bomb components, but nobody flagged these dudes. They literally were carrying a suitcase full of electronics.
The gist I got was they were salvaging a lot of raw components
from other
like
stuff.
Ripping open a wall panel. It looks like they have a wall panel ripped open and they pulled stuff out.
Okay.
So like they pulled wiring and things, circuitry out of.
But there has to be specialized hardware that they used for this.
Probably the specialized hardware they carried on. And
Yeah.
it's small and compact.
Okay. You know what? There's an implication.
They're very resourceful.
Here's what we're going to do. There's an implication at the very end that these guys may be working for a covert organization with ties directly to the Terran government, to the Earth government. So let's say they were assisted in sneaking these onto the ship. Because
they had some luggage shipped ahead.
Yes, because I think instead of seeing this as a failure on Garibaldi's part, I think we're supposed to be seeing this as the insurmountable power against which we are trying to make a stand.
Yeah.
That there is so much corruption, it is almost impossible to overcome.
Yeah. And there's a similar model or like tiers in IT security where if I'm designing my defensive security, I'm designing for a particular threat level.
Yeah.
And like, if I'm expecting an attack from like state level hackers, there's not really anything I can do to stop them except like unplug my shit.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to be able to keep everything running and block hacking efforts from state level actors.
Yeah.
That's what Garibaldi's up against.
Yeah, that's what Garibaldi's up against, is literally out of his league.
Yeah.
For now. So the guy's like, were you followed? And the other knight's like, nah, dog, I'm a ninja. I wasn't followed. Nobody's looking for me. Of course I wasn't followed. And he goes, oh, but I have identified the target. And then they pull up this like hollow picture of Sinclair looking particularly
Bum, bum, bum.
Beneficent. He's like, hello. It's just like Sinclair face. And I want to point out, because I think we've really hit our stride with separating the A story and the B story. There's no B story in this entire episode. You are laser focused on what is about to happen to Sinclair. And there's a reason, and it's because I need you to pick up your red string. You remember the one that's tied off to, there is a hole in your mind? We're about to put another peg on that board. So buckle up, because this one is important. Because they're looking at the picture of Sinclair and they're like, great, when do we take him out? And the other guy goes, soon. And then we cut to the intro.
Take him out of his bedroom and put him here.
Exactly. And then we come back and they're assembling something. And this is the chair, the aforementioned chair that they construct, like arts and crafts moment. They have I love, you know what, in my mind, they gave a prop guy $50. And they sent him to a hardware store, and he's like, okay, rubber tubing, corrugated mesh. And then he went to the guy that made the Lion King handheld video game.
Put some sparkle on
They're like,
it.
do you have any Mylar? Some clicky click things? And he's like, oh, hell yeah. Just gave him a box of orphaned electronic components, because that's what this thing. And I love it when they plug in the power supply and it's literally just a tube, and they like just stick it down in the tube, but it's like it's clicking in. Oh, I love these. They're so much fun. I love props. I love it when you could tell that these prop guys were having like the best time. Okay, the best time. And then we cut to Sinclair and Garibaldi meeting with Benson, because as much as we've been bitching and moaning about Garibaldi, he catches this guy right away.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, so how long have you been here? And he's like, 6 months. And they're like, great. When you signed on, did anybody tell you about the regulations regarding gambling?
Those were important. You weren't supposed to just scroll past those.
Yeah, were you checking your phone during that? Because you're not allowed to gamble on duty, and then off duty, you're limited to 50 credits a week. And he's like, oh, no, I'm fine. Yeah. I mean, I cut it close, but like, I don't go over that. And they're like, So we know we can check the casino records and that you haven't been gambling there. But I think we all know that there's some illegal side betting that goes on. And I think you know about it in particular because I think you've been doing it. Right.
And so they give him several chances to fess up.
Yeah.
And by the way, you're on suspension.
Yeah.
While we're investigating.
Yeah. He's like, I mean, if you get into debt with the wrong people, you become a security risk, which is true. And you can be coerced and blackmailed.
And
you can be forced to go get components for people.
So when this happens, from an administrative perspective, if you bring the person in and you say, by the way, you're suspended immediately, you cut off their access like 20 minutes before the meeting.
Yeah.
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 You have that ready to fire immediately.
Right when we were trying to be nice to Garibaldi. Maybe he stole somebody else's card.
Maybe he had a backdoor card.
Yeah. We don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The ones that he sells to McGrath.
Yeah.
To pay off his debts.
Exactly. He's like, listen, if you're in debt, we need to know about it. This is your last chance. So you can go ahead and tell us right now. And there's just silence. And they're like, okay, cool. Well, then you're suspended until we finish our investigation. So dismissed. And then Garibaldi looks over at Sinclair and he's like, he's lying. I can tell.
Yeah. And then we get this really kind of compassionate, nuanced view from Sinclair.
This is an important line. Everybody lies.
He's lying. I can tell.
Everyone lies, Michael. The innocent lie because they don't want to be blamed for something they didn't do. And the guilty lie because they don't have any other choice. Find out why he's lying. The rest will take care of itself.
This is a really great line. Because he's like, everybody lies. That is just a thing that happens.
Right.
And people lie for different reasons. So instead of just honing in on the lie, you need to hone in on the reason. Because if you can find out the why, everything else becomes a lot easier to explain. I'm mad a little bit, though, because later in this episode, we're going to find out that Sinclair's 39 years old.
Everybody lies, Rachel.
And while I
Why did he lie to say he's 39?
Maybe he had Garibaldi hack in and be like, "Can you make me 39 just in perpetuity?" And he's like, "Yeah, man, no problem."
You've always been 39.
And every year, the thing that changes is not his age; it's his birth year.
Yeah.
It just goes up 1 year.
Sir, you're hella old, but this says you started command school when you were 3.
Shh. Yeah, because he forgot to start changing his enlistment date. Anyway, he's supposed to be 39, and while I occasionally feel this deep, there's no way. 39? Come on. Who wrote that down? Who? We looked it up. Michael O'Hare is 42 when he films this. And that still feels real generous. You know, for most of the time, I think people are just talking out their ass when they're like, oh, people don't look as old now as they did before. And then they're like, oh, this guy's 39. And I'm like, shut your fool mouth. This dude is not my age. There's no way. But then I was actually cutting my hair the other day, and I used clippers because my hair is really short. So I just, and when the hair fell, it was like completely silver. And I was like,
you got a chunk on the side.
I was like, that's a lie. Who put that there? Who did that? Anyway, he's wise beyond his years. Let's put that, or he's wise enough for his years, but he's also wise enough to lie about his years. One or the other. Everybody lies, Matthew. Everybody lies. Meanwhile, we go back to shop class where they're putting together the prop chair, and he's like, "Cool. We just need a power source." And the guy goes,
"You didn't bring one?"
He's like, "You didn't bring one?" He's like, "No, it wouldn't have made it through."
They got all this other stuff.
I beg to differ. I think it would have gotten through just fine.
We just wanted to hook into... I guess Benson is the B story. And so they wanted to connect up the A story and the B story.
He's too well integrated. I think it's all one. In my mind, they're all one story. But given the actual size of this power source when we finally see it, it's like the size of a Brita pitcher filter. Like, that's exactly what it looks like.
But it has to be... It had to be carried in a protective case.
Yeah. Well, they're like, I don't think we would have gotten through it. And I just really want to point out that I think you probably could have gotten it through just fine. Just put it in your carry-on with the knife and you'd have been A-okay. He's like, I wasn't sure. I didn't want to get caught. I didn't want to risk getting caught with it. So it's taken care of.
It justifies. It's a plot device for Benson to get hooked in.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Because he goes, I improvised. It will be here. And then we get to see Benson entering the Sinclair area.
It's got the line above the U.
Yeah, I wonder if this is some sort of international writing, because later when we see Garibaldi reading the newspaper, it's just regular English.
Yeah.
It's not the Sinclair with the drop the E, put the long.
Yeah, and this may be like a more Earth common standard wording, spelling, so they don't have to have a sign with 15 different human languages.
Yeah, maybe it's easily scannable like a QR code.
Maybe.
I don't know. What matters is it doesn't matter.
It looks futuristic.
It looks futuristic. And then we come back to the doctor inspecting. Dr. Stephen Franklin is scanning Delenn, and this is really only in there for one line. One, it's slightly Stephen Franklin's backstory, a little bit, because we don't actually know all that much about him yet, except that he's a research doctor, not a bedside doctor. And he tells her, like, I'm really glad you came in and did this, because I don't really get the chance to see people when they're well. I don't get to see Minbari when they're well. I only treat them when they're sick. So it's really nice to have a baseline of what I need to get back to. Raises the question, how complete are his medical records? And then he's supposed to be treating literally any race that comes on Babylon 5 could end up in his medical lab.
Conversation, his personal medical notes were destroyed.
Right, but he could end up in a situation where there is someone who comes in who's been stabbed and he doesn't know what it looks like to put them back together.
Well, yeah.
If I were non-human, I would be terrified to get hurt on Babylon 5 because you don't even know. First of all, the likelihood of you getting stabbed is high, apparently. And then you could go to the med lab and the doctor could be like, I don't know, do you even breathe oxygen? I got no notes. I literally have no notes on you. I don't know what to do. So is this literally like a field medicine place where you could patch somebody up long enough?
For certain races, probably.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder, like, yes, this place is supposed to be, a coming together place.
Right.
So
maybe it's a little more Wild West.
why has every race that's going to be there not contributed either a doctor, a member of the medical staff, or
that's a good point.
Data on how to put them together?
I bet they've contributed data.
Yeah, but Dr. Franklin can't be expected to know all of the data that's in the computer.
Yeah.
So he may have it, but he has to look it up on the fly.
Yeah.
But the Minbari in particular are really secretive.
Yeah.
So it might be that everybody else has been like, yeah, here's our entire medical database. And the Minbari are like, why do you need it? What are you going to do with it?
Right.
You're fine. Just call us. We'll send somebody out.
We're a sturdy people.
Yeah, it'll be all right.
They'll last long enough.
And Delen's talking to Steven, and she's like, I was talking to that other doctor, and he was telling me that you used to, what is the word, hitchhike on spaceships? And he's like, oh, yeah, I would trade my medical expertise for passage on ships. Of course, that all ended with the war. And she's like, oh, yeah, the war. What did you do? What were you up to during the war? And he's like, well, towards the end when it got desperate, they tried to get all xenobiologists to share their notes so that they could create biological warfare weapons. Yeah. And I destroyed my notes rather than have them used to kill people. And she's like, oh my God, thank you. That's really great. Now I don't have to have you murdered in your sleep. Like, that's just great. Yeah. Thank you. I'm so happy that you said that.
You moved up a couple ranks on my list.
Right. And
favorite humans.
Dr. Franklin is like, what did you do during the war? This is the only reason this conversation exists. What did you do during the war? And she's like, a topic for another time.
What about you, Ambassador? What did you do during the war?
A topic for another time. Good day, Doctor.
Good day.
Whoop, 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 whoop. If you needed a place to tie off a red string, that's an excellent one. That's going to be a topic for another time. Just boop, put a pin in that. I put red alert in my notes.
Yeah.
So Benson delivers the energy pod to the Knights. It turns out that's what he was doing in the secure area. That was the innovation that the one guy talked about. And they pay him. They pay him generously for his betrayal of the entire station. But he wasn't concerned about betraying the station because he thought they were also going to provide him with a transfer to somewhere else.
Right.
And guess what? Turns out
they lied.
Turns out everybody lies. Everybody lies. So they plug. I made air quote fingers. They plug the power source in and they're like, cool, I think we're ready to proceed. And then, Sinclair's having a nightmare. And you know what's interesting? We never talk about how they grab Sinclair.
Yeah, I do like that. They didn't. Maybe they tried to film it and they couldn't come up with.
They have to drag his unconscious body?
It's better to leave it up to our imaginations.
Yeah. How did they get him?
How did they work around security?
Right. Did they wait till he went to bed? Did they grab him? And then
he must have gone back to his room because his communicator's there.
Right. Yes, correct. So they had to grab him from his room and then they had to tote him unconscious from his room all the way down to their room, which is in the red sector. And yet later they can't take Benson's body any farther than an airlock in red sector.
Right. They must have had cooperation from somebody else on the station to transport.
Yeah, that's
Sinclair.
correct. We're not really going to cover that, but I think that's something that we can fill in as critical viewers, is that there is more collaboration happening here than we're privy to. Because someone had to let them in. They had to get into his room because there's no sign of a break-in. And then they had to get him out. and they had to get him all the way down to the extended stay hotel without anyone noticing that maybe they put that jacket on that he was wearing when he was walking around with Londo, and everybody saw them carrying him through, and they were like, "Who is that? We have literally no idea."
I've never seen that man before.
I have never seen that man before in my life.
Oh, that's Sinclair's undercover outfit. Okay, he must be.
Yeah, no,
he's up to something.
Okay, they all wink at each other. Okay, yeah, no, he's undercover again. It's fine. But he's having a nightmare, and I really hope you like this scene because you're gonna see it again.
So,
a lot.
I have something to say about his pajamas.
Okay, his not pajamas. Pajamas.
His flight suit is not underneath.
I know. Well,
I guess he doesn't sleep in his flight suit.
He had that talk with Garibaldi, where Garibaldi was like, "You need to stop trying to kill yourself. I know. I see you. I see what you're doing, and you need to fucking quit it because it's easier to find a reason to die than it is to find a reason to live."
Mm-hmm.
So maybe his first step
was to stop sleeping in his flight suit.
Stop sleeping in his flight suit. He's still sleeping in his uniform pants because he's even wearing his belt, which sounds terrible.
Yeah.
But he's at least not wearing his flight suit. And he took his communicator off.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have a subdermal implant? Is that what it attaches to?
No, it's probably just sticky.
Yeah, but you'd have to keep renewing the stickiness.
This is the future.
This is the future?
Yeah, this is the future.
All right.
Maybe it just works.
Okay. It just works. Stop asking questions. All right. I think it's a magnet. Because, my sister has a cochlear implant, and she has a subdermal implant that's a magnet. And that's what her external cochlear piece sticks to.
Right.
Is the magnet. Which means she can literally stick a refrigerator magnet to the outside of her head. It'd be a great way to stick a communicator to the back of your hand.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying. Anyway, he's having a nightmare. And what this nightmare is the scene where he's flying in formation on the line. And he's like, Mitchell, no! And it's the
one
scene.
Of his guys breaks off out of formation to take a shot.
Don't we see this scene in The Gathering?
I think so.
Yeah. And he's like, it could be, oh my God, it's a trap. Pew, 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 pew. And then everybody blows up, and then he gets disabled, and he ends up ramming speed at the Minbari cruiser. And right before he's going to hit them, they just disable his ship and bring it in. And we've seen this before, and spoiler alert, we're going to see it like 6 more times in this episode. So every time, I'm in my notes, I just said heretofore referred to as the scene. So it's the scene. We're going to get a little bit more elaboration towards the end, but we really don't fill gaps in the scene.
Right. We're just establishing that there is some secret information in his brain that's been hidden away.
There is a hole in his mind, one might say. Mm-hmm. So he wakes up all sweaty, which I would also be if I was wearing polyester pants that were still belted tightly at my waist. And I was underneath my quilt, my 90s quilted quilt anyway. And he gets up and he drinks some water, which is very Korean of him because he has his pitcher out on the counter already.
An open pitcher, yeah.
An open pitcher just ready to drink water. And then he's like, oh no, my TV's off. So he goes over and pokes the TV and he's like, oh, TV, hello. And then he tries to call maintenance and it doesn't work. And then he goes and gets his communicator and he's like, maintenance?
Nobody's responding. None of the technology is working, but his door opens.
Yeah, well, none of the communication technology is working because he also gets there via tube. Because I don't think he lives like 2 doors down from the command and control center.
I kind of think he does.
It's fine. He puts the communicator on the back of his hand. That's important. And then he leaves and he ends up in the CNC wearing his uniform. He takes the trouble. Everyone's gone. Nothing is working. Nobody's talking. But he does not leave the room without getting dressed.
It's a ritual to get him in the right mindset.
That makes sense. That's fine. He gets up to the command and control and everything is off. And he's like, what? And the computer wakes up and it goes online. And he's like, okay, well, was there a evacuation ordered in the last 8 hours? And the computer's like, nah, everything's fine. Situation green. He goes, okay, are there any life signs on the ship? Yeah, 1 in the central corridor. So he rushes off to go figure out who this one remaining life sign is. Probably hoping against hope that it's not Jakar. Please don't let it be Jakar. Jakar's not even in this. I'm always bummed.
Yeah.
Every episode without Jakar and Londo
There's no
is
Londo,
a
yeah.
lost opportunity. They would have sorted this out immediately. All you got to do is take Sinclair and get him drunk. This is so elaborate. Just give him to Londo for 24 hours. We'd know everything about his life. And we end up in the most dramatic of all hallways. And I want to point out how brilliant the idea of having that matte painting in the back that shows the curvature, the corridor curving up and away, because it gives us this feeling of immense space with it actually being like a 20-foot long set. It's great. And we get these spotlights, which we talked about a lot in Forever Night, that the lighting and the way you can create this sense of set and atmosphere and ambiance with just dramatic lighting. And this is an excellent example because we have these cool spotlights and they disappear and end up narrowing our field of view until we only have Sinclair and Night 1. And it creates
That's Night 2.
Is it Night 2?
Mm-hmm.
I don't fucking know.
Long hair guy is Night 1.
Okay, the Night, British Night?
British Night.
And it creates this intimate, eerie, isolated
the English
setting.
Knigget.
I am not calling him the English And he gets to deliver these really dramatic lines, and it works. It would feel melodramatic, except we have already created this otherworldly atmosphere for the viewer just with lighting. Because he's like, maybe you're asleep.
What the hell is going on around here?
Maybe you're asleep. Maybe you're insane. Maybe you're dead. Maybe you're in hell. Not that it matters much, Commander Sinclair, because wherever you are, wherever you go, you're mine.
You're mine now, bitch.
I got you where I want you.
I got you where I want you. And then we come back to Garibaldi reading the paper. This whole thing is happening. Sinclair's having an existential crisis. He's been kidnapped and trapped.
And
in,
Garibaldi's just starting his workday.
I mean, Garibaldi picked up his Universe Today, which we find out from the bottom right corner is the Universe Today Babylon 5 edition. Interesting.
Extra propaganda.
Interesting. Do they edit it for Babylon 5? Because there's some things you don't want other aliens picking up. I don't know. Interesting.
It could just be like the whole Universe Today publication is much larger.
Yeah.
But they narrow it down for the
what would be relevant
copy.
to Babylon
5.
Yeah,
stuff that's relevant on Babylon 5.
And I know we're all wondering what all those headlines were, so you're welcome. I wrote them down. I had to pause and rewind like a bunch. And it turns out that it's longer than 30 seconds because I couldn't use the go back 30 seconds button or the go forward 30 seconds button. I had to drag it. But one of the things that shows up first is the pros and cons of interspecies mating.
Dead center.
It's off the right. It's like a little,
okay.
On the next page will be the deeper whatever, but it's like the little
It's
advertisement.
like a colored box.
It's a colored box, yeah. And then Psychor election tangle. Did Psychor violate its charter by endorsing the vice president? The fact that we worked all of this shit in. Every single one of these is a pin you
literal
need to put.
Years in advance.
Narns settle Ragesh 3 controversy. So the Narns have apparently not given up on Ragesh 3. They're
still settling the controversy.
They're still settling it. And President promises reduced budget by $22.60. San Diego still considered too reactive for occupancy. And underneath it's
radioactive.
What did I say?
Reactive.
Oh, still reactive, but also radioactive.
Yeah.
And underneath it says it was the first act of nuclear terror 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But it won't be able to be lived in again for another 300 years. And there's another one that says the copyright trial continues, which feels a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Deep Space Nine versus Babylon 5. And then the home guard. I don't know what happens to my mouth when I start podcasting. The home guard leader,
Home guard?
Lester, I think it's Jack Lester, convicted and found guilty in attack on the Minbari embassy. So all of those things are really interesting, aren't they?
And I bet a lot of them will come up again
Will
at some
they?
point.
Will they? And then Delenn arrives and he has to put his paper down. Like, oh God, I just picked it up. I haven't even gotten to the sports section yet. And she's there to report
Oh, no, he's
that...
looking for the comics. That's his favorite part.
Because it's the only page that's in color. But Delenn arrives to report that Sinclair was supposed to show up in the council chambers an hour ago and has not yet arrived. And he's like, I don't know, go tell Ivanova about it. She's like, oh, I already did. And Ivanova hasn't seen him since last night. And he's like, okay. So he calls Sinclair on the communicator. He's like, Commander, nothing. Meanwhile, he's talking to Delenn. And as he's like, okay, it turns out something urgent just came up and I got to go, because he's realized, the commander's missing.
And he's the head of security.
On his radio, that's playing ambiance in the background. One of the guys like, a fight broke out. I need backup. And then he says something I couldn't pick up. And then like, I don't know, could go either way. And then it says, maintenance, please respond to the security blackout in red sector. So later, when we are trying to figure out, I just want to point out, okay, that when Natath wanted to find Jakar, she was like, cool, what tube just broke down? And she just checked there first.
Yeah.
And then when we're looking for Sinclair,
where in the station is there any problems?
Did anybody look and go, have there been any security blackouts in any particular areas? Maybe we should start our search there. Did they literally start on the left side and start working towards the right?
Yeah.
Or did they start on the left and right and start going towards the middle?
They probably started at the front of the station where command and control and like the staff quarters are.
Yeah.
And then moved toward the back of the station where red sector is pretty far down.
Yeah.
Just based on proximity of the last place he was seen.
Yeah. Oh, all of the security monitors in red section all went down simultaneously. God, I hate when we get gremlins in the works.
We get this like phased blackout from the front of the station in like 15-minute chunks. Security was down.
Almost as if they're dragging a body. No, that couldn't possibly be it.
Never happened.
Mm-hmm. I put that on the table. It's right there. Just gonna, you know what I'm thinking.
So in project management, I don't know, concepts, philosophy, whatever, there's a thing called lessons learned. And you do it at the end of phases of a project and at the end of the project itself. And you just get everybody together and say, okay, what went wrong here?
Okay. I know.
And how did we resolve it? And you document this stuff and you have a big like knowledge base of lessons learned. And so then when you're getting ready to do the next project, you can say, let's go look at like while we're scaffolding out the plan for this project, we can go look at lessons learned. And, oh, here's a thing that we're planning to do. And here's when somebody else tried to do it, the unexpected problems they encountered and how they resolved those problems in the end. How can we prevent those problems from happening? And security is like, that's basically all of security.
Yeah.
A bad thing happened. And at the end, you can have like a postmortem.
Yeah.
After the event, after you resolve the problems, like after everything's normal again. Okay, how do we prevent this from happening again? New security protocols.
Yep. Maybe they need to bring the Toth in on these discussions.
Yeah. Bring in outside consultants. You do. There's a thing called red team, blue team.
Yes.
Where you have your staff, and sometimes you break up your own staff. So half of them play red team, half of them play blue team.
Blue, green, and purple.
They just draw colors out of. Oh, wait, never mind. And I feel like that whole
They would benefit from some external scrutiny.
yeah,
On the
bring in
process.
some consultants
I can understand.
or like an audit.
I can understand it's been a year. We haven't had these major problems for a year because we didn't have enough content to create a television show about it for a year.
Well,
And so we
I was
could've-
thinking about this.
Well, we could have reached a level of complacency in terms of
Right.
no one expects anybody to kidnap the commander.
Right.
And so when it happens, you're like, shit. I can absolutely see Garibaldi being so close to Commander Sinclair, making him too emotional about the kidnapping to coherently work through the process of finding him.
Another thing I thought of was when the Minbari lady, poet, singer, whatever, got stabbed and Delen's chewing him out appropriately.
Yeah, do better.
She says there was a time where you could walk through the station
that's what I'm-
unescorted,
Yeah.
and the station had just recently gone fully online. And so Delen could have been there for up to a year on the station before it was considered fully operational.
Yeah.
And it's not a target because there's not a lot of business going through there. There's not a lot of important people there. And so there's just not a lot of opportunists targeting Babylon 5.
Right.
And so, yeah, the safety rating was higher because there was less value in attacking or exploiting opportunities on Babylon 5. And so they got complacent because the bad guys weren't going there.
Yeah.
But then once it was fully operational and all the shipping and import-export business stuff starts ramping up, now it's getting a lot more attention.
Well, I think petty crime was one thing. And like Jakar said in the episode with the Home Guard, where he said, so much for Babylon 5's highly vaunted justice. We could have been in a position where Babylon 5 was known for being secure, was known for handling its shit, and it's literally escalated so quickly, so unexpectedly, that they have not had the time. They haven't had the time to hire additional personnel. They haven't had the time to...
Or the people they do hire get into gambling debts.
Yeah, or they're suspect.
Yep.
And yeah, I think we could just be in a position where it has pivoted so quickly that they haven't been able to adjust to it yet. And I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt on this because because, who expected this to happen? Who would have expected for the commander to be kidnapped on the station? And Garibaldi is just one dude. And at this point, he doesn't have a lot of trusted advisors who could back him up and be like, all right, I'll look through. Why doesn't Ivanova look through the maintenance record? Why doesn't maintenance report and say, hey, we just had a blackout in this area. Maybe we should check there first. This isn't a singular failure. This is a systematic failure.
Right.
And yeah, it's probably like we just didn't expect this shit to happen. So we're so blindsided by it, we can't think our way through it.
They're dealing with organized crime.
Yeah,
and the back doors from the Earth government.
And it definitely could be, like, if you look back at the history on the war on drugs, right? I listened to a really good podcast episode of This Is Actually Happening, where we talked to a police officer who worked undercover as like a sting operative for drug stuff. And he was talking about how, like, when he first started, there was not the type of violent crime that we have now because there was kind of
unspoken agreement.
Not an unspoken agreement, but the more that the police escalate cracking down on petty crime, the more petty crime escalates on their reaction. So it ends up being like a tower of blocks where every time you put a block on top, the other guy has to put a block on top, and it ends up just escalating the violence and escalating the severity of people's reaction to petty crime. And it doesn't actually crack all that much petty crime. Like, it doesn't actually stop the petty crime all that much, but it does make it more violent. And so it could be a situation where petty crime was at a point where we had reached equilibrium. We blocked the most violent of it, but there was a lot of Nagrath happening that we just kind of let go, because you can't get rid of it, and the harder you try, the worse the violence gets. And so we could have reached this state of equilibrium, and so we were not progressing in terms of how we enacted security measures.
Yeah.
And so now that it's become more extreme, it's unexpected. It takes time to adapt to that. And yeah, maybe they had a meeting after this and they were like, guys, we need to look at maintenance reports and stuff, because
We need to factor that in.
And maybe they did, because I don't remember this. I don't remember being mad about this for very long. Who knew two dudes who were both named Knight were going to show up and kidnap Sinclair and trap him in a
It
VR
didn't get
game?
flagged because they had different last names.
Knight 1, EONE, and Knight 2, which was just like Chi, CTHWO.
Yeah.
2. But we go back to Sinclair and he's like, what have you done to my station? Where did everybody go? And the guy's like, I didn't do anything. I didn't fuck all to your station. You, on the other hand, are really fucked. And he gives him, he's like, you're wrapped into cybernetic mesh and blah, blah, blah. And Sinclair breaks it down for us. He's like, oh, a virtual reality cybernet. But wait, those are illegal. Like the change, he doesn't say it, but it just reminds me of the changeling net when they're like, oh, he has a changeling net? He can't possibly have a changeling net. Those are illegal. And Sinclair's like, oh my God, we're in a simulation. None of this is real. And the guy's like, what is real, Commander? Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure this is not real and that the real life is real. I think we can kind of, And then he calls Garibaldi out and he's like, Commander. And then he shoots him. And Commander Sinclair's like, no, Garibaldi. And he's like, dude, relax. It's not real.
Like I just said, it's a simulation.
And he respawns Garibaldi like in a bunch of different places. And then he goes, we can kill him as many times as you want. And we were watching it and I went, do you promise? Poor Garibaldi. He's gonna get better. I have no, of course, just
We'll have faith.
the only way out is through. Okay. So he's like, this is a shadow play without form or substance, but I'm real and you're real and the pain is real. And then like lightning comes down from the sky and hits Sinclair.
Poor Sinclair.
And then we come back.
Ouchie.
I know. He's like, "Oh, I've been tortured by worse. I mean, I don't know that yet." Anyway, Garibaldi checks Sinclair's quarters and he's like, oh no, he's gone, because he picks up his communicator. And remember how when we saw Sinclair leave his room earlier, he got his communicator. Now Garibaldi finds his communicator. That's how we know we're in the real world. That's when he calls up to Ivanova
So the
and he's like,
communicators should have a status marker that it sends to the system to say, I am on somebody's hand or I am not.
well, honey,
Future
listen,
improvements.
I think we should be hired as Babylon 5 security consultants because it turns out we're experts. So Garibaldi finally calls the problem into Ivanova. He's like, he left his room and he didn't take his phone. Something definitely happened. He loves that thing. And then we go back to Sinclair. And the guy is still talking to him. Night 2, apparently. The British Knigget is like, it's funny. We have your whole life to work with. I have all of your memories.
But you're stuck here.
Literally dude, how many women, right? How many? And why are they all named Catherine or Caroline or anyway, so many to play with. But for some reason, you're stuck here. Because this place matters to you, doesn't it? And Sinclair's like, hold on, we? And so the guy's like, oh yeah, my bro who's watching us while we do this. Somebody has to be there to monitor the drugs and all the other stuff. And he's like, why are you doing this? And Night 2 is like, yeah, so 10 years ago when you were on the line, you disappeared for 24 hours and then the Minbari surrendered. And like, that's totally weird, right? And Sinclair goes, yeah, I
What
blacked
did you do?
out.
Stop lying.
I blacked out. I'll tell you what I did. I blacked out. And he's like, okay, well, I don't believe you. Nobody believes you. I'm not the only one who doesn't believe you. And we're finally going to get the truth, even if it kills you. Matt goes, if he dies, he dies.
You know what I'm thinking of right now is there's a show called Invincible, but there's a meme and it's like this guy and his son and they're like superhero,
Yeah.
whatever. And he's gesturing at some like fighter jets and he's like, look what they need just to reproduce a fraction of our power. And I imagine like Bester walking in and looking at this setup, like, look at what they need to replicate just a fraction of
they
our
could have
power.
just hired a telepath to do this,
Yeah.
theoretically speaking. However, that would have involving the Psy-Core.
Right. Which is a whole other
Which
deal.
is a whole kettle of fish.
But I bet the Psy-Core is curious about what Sinclair was up to in those 24 hours.
Maybe it's not even on their radar. Maybe they're not concerned about it.
Because he's just a vanilla mortal.
Because what does it matter? The Minbari surrendered, which is a point he brings up later. It's not like they demanded concessions. It's not like we're occupied. They literally were like, "Oop, our bad. Oops. Oh, shit. I'm so sorry. We surrender. We surrender, bruh." Like that's literally all they did. And so Sinclair is like, "Why are you mad though? Like they surrendered. We didn't have to give up anything except that we got to keep living." And he makes that point several times. And they keep coming back to like, yeah, but look at what's happening now. Aliens live on Earth. Okay. Like, all right. Anyway, we come back to Garibaldi, Ivanova, and Stephen Franklin, and they're all together. And it must be serious because Stephen's wearing his uniform. And this is where they're having like a powwow. They're having their scrum meeting or whatever, their stand up, where Garibaldi is like, okay, so I've pulled every non-essential personnel to do the search, but it could take days because it's a really big fucking ship. And there's no way that we could possibly narrow down this search. And Stephen's like, well, we might not have days if he's injured or, literally we have like a limited amount of time to find him before the danger increases. Mm-hmm. And if he's not already dead. And Ivanova's like, well, I've already told people in nearby sectors to start searching ships that left during that time in case he got off on a ship. And Garibaldi tells them we need to send some maintenance bots out to search the hull and check for bodies floating near the station. And Ivanova's like, fucking what? And he's like, well, if you threw him on an airlock, the gravity of the station will keep him nearby. So his body will be here to find. And she goes, you know what? There are days when I'm really glad I don't have to think like you do.
Right. So this is a good example of Garibaldi being really good
at his job.
The responsive actions
yes.
to a security event.
Well, him being really good at like, okay, what I can think the hard thoughts.
Right.
I can think the worst. I can imagine the worst case. Yeah, I can imagine the worst case scenario. Am I great at all the little details? No, but that's where everybody else needs to pick up the slack. Garibaldi doesn't. Not all his fault. He's not the only man doing this.
Big picture people and little picture people.
Yeah, and he's very good big picture where he'll be like, okay, well, he could be dead, and if he's dead, they're going to want to get rid of the body, and here's where they're going to want to get rid of the body.
Yeah.
So. And then we come back to Sinclair, because this is where they're like, your name is Jeffrey David Sinclair. Rank commander, age 39. Lie! 80, no, he's not 39. And he was born on Mars, which we know, because he has a little Mars on his desk.
Yeah. Little Mars globe.
Little Mars globe. On May 3rd, 2218, which makes him a Taurus. I don't know if astronomy still works when you're born on Mars, but he's,
Well, I'm going to ask Kate.
We should, because he feels Taurus coded. So I feel like that's probably correct. He enlisted when he's 19, which we find out. And he's a career officer like his father and his grandfather and his great-grandfather, which we already knew because he said they've been fighter pilots all the way back to World War II. And everyone had him pegged to just keep rising in the ranks, but he's been commander for a while. So why did you hop off-the-merry-go-round? And Sinclair's like, first of all, fuck you. Second of all, fuck
PTSD.
you. Yeah, I was on the line, bitch. And he goes, I don't have to tell you shit. And I'm betting you don't have a lot of time, considering security is probably definitely already looking for me. So I mean, is that really the question you want me to answer? And the guy's like, okay, assuming you're still on Babylon 5, which is a big assumption.
Yeah.
And then he's like, maybe you won't tell me, but you'll tell somebody else. And he makes Mitchell appear. And I have to wonder, were they that close? Well, why do we, maybe.
I think he feels really responsible for Mitchell's death.
Yeah.
And Mitchell was one of his people.
I mean,
under his
I don't
command.
think he necessarily feels responsible for his death, but it's the one person who's got a face that we've seen before.
Yeah,
So
because
we
he
can
called
bring
him
him
out.
back?
He called
Yeah.
that because that guy, it wasn't just they were all staying in formation and they were each getting picked off. Mitchell peeled off.
Yeah.
Kind of against Sinclair's orders.
Yeah.
Sinclair was telling him to come back, but Mitchell went anyway. And he's like, no, Mitchell, it's a trap. And so maybe Sinclair feels like I could have said different words.
Yeah.
And I could have said them differently.
If I
to
could have made him
convince
listen to me.
Yeah, then he might still be alive.
Yeah. And he's like, why did you betray us, Sinclair? And Sinclair's like, psh, nice try, asshole. Mitchell's dead. And Mitchell's like, you swore we'd all go down together, but you're alive and we're dead because of you. And Sinclair's like, okay, I reject this narrative. I am not receiving this right now. We all make our own choices is basically what he says. He's like, no, you didn't listen to me. You never listened to me. And look what happened. And then he's like, I tried. And the guy's like, okay, you tried what? He's like, I tried. And like, tried to do what? He's like, I tried to ram the cruiser. Obviously, we come back to this really dramatic lighting moment where Sinclair's in the background, like 3/4 profile, and Night 2 is in the foreground, like other direction 3/4 profile, and they're lit. And it's this very like when we come back to Bohemian Rhapsody and they're all in the little like diamond pattern. That's exactly what it reminds me of. It's just perfect. He's like, okay, so you tried to ram the Minbari, and then what? And then what? He's like, then I blacked out. Did I fucking stutter?
He said something passed in front of my eyes. And he says, and nothing has ever shaken your belief or your conviction that you have no memory of that. And he's like, yeah, no. I've never doubted it, except.
I mean, there was that one thing. That's a little bit later, though, because right now he goes, you don't want to remember. Have you thought about that? Have you thought that maybe you don't want to remember because you betrayed the entire human race? And Sinclair's like, nuh-uh. And I'm going to refer to this as the Sinclair smash because he has one punch. And he throws his entire body into the punch. And that's the way that he fights ever. It's his like right hook. And it's the Sinclair smash because Sinclair smashes this guy and it hurts so much. It kicks him out of the simulation. And this is when Sinclair goes, well, it looks like the pain is real for both of us. And then he opens and closes his fist. And I hope you like that scene too, because he's going to do that a lot.
Well, I think this is him reconnecting with his external body. And he's realizing that he can move his real body a little bit.
This is absolutely him finding the bridge.
Yeah.
Feeling the actual sensation. Because if the pain is real between the simulation and your body, then sensation is the bridge. So if he can figure out how to feel his real hand, he can figure out how to break himself out of this.
Yep.
That is absolutely what's happening. And then we have this moment, which is really just to close a slight pothole. And it is Delenn offering Ivanova help. And she's like, well, we really don't have anything you can do right now. We're working at capacity. We're looking for him. We just have to wait for a break. And Delenn goes, have you tried Talia? Have you tried having the telepath look for him?
Yeah.
And Ivanova's like, no, she's P5, so it requires close proximity or physical touch. It's just so people can't go, how come they didn't have Talia look for him?
Except they don't know that Talia has some extra power boost.
You know what? It doesn't matter because we're never, ever going to ever talk about it again.
It would be a shortcut. It would shortcut plot.
Yeah.
In an unfulfilling way.
Yeah. There's no way to work it in because maybe that's maybe moving the penny was the extent of her ability.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Benson is listening to this conversation and he's like, oh shit. Did I do something wrong?
Uh-oh. Yeah,
Oh, no.
Benson's starting to feel guilty. Did I help the bad guys?
He knew he helped the bad guys, but he's like, oh no, did my actions have really big consequences instead of really tiny consequences?
Tiny consequences are okay.
Yeah, I was okay with
him.
other people getting hurt, but maybe not the command. Not other people getting hurt in a way that directly affects me. Oh no. And then we go back to the Knights because night 1 and night 2 are both having an actual conversation because he literally got Sinclair smashed out of the simulation and he's drinking water and he's like, oh my God, he's a tough nut to crack. We're going to have to up his drugs. How's it going, by the way? And the other guy's like, well, I only know what I see on the monitors, but like security is maybe closing in on us. We got a couple hours left, maybe no more. And they're like, okay, well, we got to really hit it hard then. And he's like, but that could shatter his mind. Kill him. And then he goes, if he dies, he dies. He doesn't say that. But he's like, that is a risk I am willing to take. That
Right, to uncover the truth.
Yeah.
The truth.
Meanwhile, Garibaldi, and I think this guy's name is Jack. This is the guy that Bester talked to in customs.
Right.
And we were like, are we going to see him
Pay
again?
attention. He's a recurring character.
Yeah, and here he is. He's back. I think his name is Jack. And he's like, I got everybody. Because Garibaldi's like, split into smaller teams. Search faster. Search harder. Do it harder, better, faster, stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, man, I called everybody in. I even called Benson back in. And Garibaldi's like, you fucking called Benson? He's a security risk. And Jack is like, well, I mean, he was, but I checked his account and he got a huge deposit and paid off a bunch of debts. And now he's fine.
Yeah, he's solvent now.
Yeah, so clearly he's no problem, no risk. He paid his shit off. What? He's like, he even had a surplus. And Garibaldi's like, hold on. So he just beep, boop, beep, pulls up his bank account.
I checked this yesterday and he was
tapped
negative.
out. Yeah, he had nothing. And he's like, wait a minute. He got a deposit of 15,000 grand like 2 hours before Sinclair got kidnapped. That's fine.
Not suspicious.
That's fine.
Right, and he paid off a bunch of little debts, and he's left with 5,000 at the end.
Listen, if it's 500 credits for a loaf of bread, a bottle of wine, and a thing of Antarian flarn,
the flarn's really expensive.
well, then $15,000 doesn't go. Some of his debts are like 100,
Well,
or like 1,800.
If it's like a 100 credit bottle of wine,
yeah,
and
200,
300 for flarn. maybe the douchebag went all out on the bottle of wine and got like a $300 bottle of wine.
Well, that was not douchebag. That was Catherine. Catherine, when she's seducing Sinclair,
right. Yeah,
she shows up with a baguette, a bottle of wine, and some flarn, and that was 500 credits. So one of his debts is 1,800 credits. That could be 3 loaves of bread.
Yeah.
Depending on what was the most expensive thing in that trio. Maybe she bought, some wine is really expensive. And maybe genuine earth wine is really expensive.
Yeah.
Because we know it's expensive
to
import coffee.
Yeah.
So importing actual wine.
So the wine could have been almost the entirety of the cost.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely could be. But they actually don't dismiss this. Garibaldi's like, oh, yeah, this is a thing. This is the thing we need to look into because he may know information. So then they're off to look for Benson, which we only know because Benson is like, the whole station's looking for me. They don't spoon feed us a lot in Babylon 5.
Yeah.
In this episode, it's particularly evident. You have to get it from context. This is not a show you could watch and check your social media at the same time. Like you have to put your phone down and pay attention to this show.
Right, because they're dropping hints.
Yeah, a lot of stuff is woven in there, or it's shown in like background imagery, which I appreciate.
Like Jakar swapping out the tomato.
Which I appreciate, and yet at the same time, I am a person who actually enjoys being spoon-fed plot. So it's inside me there are 2 wolves. Okay, the one that appreciates great writing, and the other one that's like, but you didn't tell me that explicitly. So they're trying to push him to remember. And he does the thing. It's the thing. I don't know why they all did. They'll like put your hand on either side of your face and do the like the face. I don't know. Every time it pops up, an actor does it. I'm like, did they teach you that at Juilliard? Is that how you're supposed to look like you're thinking hard? I don't. Okay, whatever. And up pops a figure in gray with a really cool looking staff. And then we like spotlight 9 more of them. And then it pans out and we realize they are standing in a circle around Sinclair. And he's like, what? What are you doing here? What do you want? And it echoes. It's a dramatic moment for Sinclair. And they end up shooting him with the beam weapon from their staffy thing. Could have whacked him on the back of the head with the staff. That would have worked just as effectively. But they pew-pew him. And then Benson comes back to the Knights because they're the ones that paid him.
That's the only...
I think he's looking for his transfer. He's like, you guys promised me a transfer. The entire station's looking for me now because of what you guys had me do. You owe me the transfer. But then he's like, oh shit, is that Sinclair? And we find out that the one guy only has one eyeball in the simulation. And he's like, kill him. Fucking kill that guy. And so they do. They shoot Benson. And then we come back to Sinclair because after that moment where he got shot, they're back on the stairs of Babylon 5. And the guy is like, what are you hiding? And Sinclair's like, I'm not hiding anything. I'm literally telling you the truth. And he goes, well, we all hide behind something. Is that why we bounced back here? Is it because this is what you hide behind?
I'm not hiding anything.
We all hide things, Commander. That's why we bounced back here again, isn't it? This is where you hide, behind duty and responsibility and obligation.
Things you'd never understand.
Wrong. Not wrong. We're both patriots in our own way.
You hide behind your responsibility. Yeah.
What he hides behind is his duty.
Duty.
And he's like, yeah, things you'll never understand. And the guy's like, you know what? You are so wrong about me. First of all, you don't know the first thing about me. You only see my posts on social media. You don't know what I do in real life. He's like, we're both patriots in our own way. And if I fail, more people are going to come and try to figure this out because we need to know.
Right. There are dozens of us.
Dozens. Meanwhile, we found Benson's body outside the station. They could have just kept his body in the room with them, and they probably would have never found them. But they take his body
or it
and
would
they
have
dump
taken longer.
They dump his body out the airlock, and Garibaldi's like, well, they couldn't have gotten far, so if he was floating outside Red Sector, we need to concentrate on Red Sector. And we come back to Sinclair because everything's happening pretty quick now because we're reaching our climax.
Right.
He's like,
he's broken through the memory block.
Right. He's like, I don't remember. I woke up 24 hours later and the guy's like, yeah, and the war was over because the Minbari surrendered on the eve of their victory and you fucking slept through it.
What did you do in those 24 hours?
Yeah. And he's like, not only were you missing, but your ship was gone. You weren't even on the scans. You were missing. You didn't just black out. You disappeared.
Yeah,
like,
so
he's like, no, that was a malfunction on the screen.
Yeah, the court martial proved it.
Yeah, or the hearing proved that. And he's like, did it? Did it? And this is when Sinclair's like, why does it fucking matter? They surrendered. They didn't win. Why are you here? And he's like, yeah, well, you know what I think happened? I think they saw our defenses. They realized what a frontal assault would cost them. And why risk their lives on an all-out attack when you can attack from within? They needed a 5th column, and I had to look this up.
Yeah.
And it's just like a
compromised faction within your organization.
A corrupt element inside your like a spy.
Like Hydra within within what's the name of the secret organization in the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
Shield?
Shield.
Yeah.
Hydra within Shield.
You're lucky. I knew that. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. You know why? Because J. Michael Straczynski wrote part of the Thor movie. And so I've seen the Thor movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so they needed a 5th column. And that's you, Commander. You are the corrupt element inside the government. And he's like, bold that you think so when I'm literally out here in Timbuktu. Like,
he's the Manchurian candidate.
he's like, I'm way out here where I can affect no change. You had to come out here to me. I am not in there doing anything. And yet, of course, yeah, no, I'm the corruptive element inside the government. It's fine. What corruption do you think is happening? Is basically what he says. He's like, what do you think they're getting out of this? And he's like, look at Earth, Commander.
But they needed a fifth column. People like you. Look at Earth, Commander. Alien civilization, alien migration, aliens buying up real estate by the square mile, alien funding of Babylon 5. What they couldn't take by force, they're corrupting, inch by inch.
What does that have to do with me?
Nobody wants to die, especially not out there in the coldest space, so you surrendered. They took you aboard their ship, fixed you some milk and cookies, and asked you to work for them. Be their eyes, their ears, their voice. You agreed. You and God knows how many other people. And then they let you go.
You're insane.
There's illegal aliens picking our crops. There's aliens like...
Dude, I haven't been on Earth in years.
He's like, I wasn't even born on Earth. There's a possibility he's never been to Earth. He's like, he literally, this guy's like, aliens are buying our real estate. I wanted to buy a house. You know what happened? He was trying to buy a house and he got outbid.
By a Minbari.
By a Minbari. And he's like, oh, hell no, not on my watch. This is government level, bitches. I'm going to go figure out how they got their foot in the door. That's
Sinclair was in on this. Sinclair!
I liked that kitchen so much.
The layout was perfect.
We were all going to have our own bedroom. Night one was going to have a bedroom.
All the money
night
that
two.
I saved up for my down payment, I'm going to pay in bribes to get into Babylon 5.
I need to know how you got them in so that they could outbid me on my real estate.
I was going to raise my family there.
That's what he means by there are more of us, and it's really just the future version of the Realtors Association. They are the faction inside the government that is trying to figure out why aliens are now being allowed to buy real estate.
Yeah.
100% believe this. I have bought and sold enough houses. I completely believe that this is yes. And he's like, listen, I get it. No one wants to die. No one wants to be outbid on their dream home. You got taken aboard their ship. They fed you milk and cookies, and then they asked you to work for them, and you were like, yeah. And Sinclair's like, are you a moron? Like, are you okay? You are crazy town if you think that that's what happened. And he's like, well, are you sure though? Because you don't remember. So that could have been what happened. And then Sinclair gets this really great moment where he's like, hold on a fucking second. What were you doing during the war? Were you buying up property so you could sell it later? Like, what were you doing?
Did you till the ground? Did you plant the seeds?
You did not help me plant the seeds. You did not help me grow the wheat. You did not help me harvest the wheat. You did not help me grind the wheat. You do not get any fucking bread. Okay? He's like, you talk about the war, but you weren't there. You can't even conceive of what it cost me to fight on the line. He's like, we were outnumbered. We were outgunned. And when I looked at those ships, I didn't just see my own death. I saw the death of the whole damn human race. And he's like, oh, okay. So like, why'd they surrender then? And he goes, I don't know. Maybe the universe blinked. Maybe God changed his mind. All I know is that we got a second chance and we need to not look this gift horse in the mouth. He's like, okay, all right. So nothing has ever made you doubt the belief that you don't know what happened in those 24 hours. Nothing has ever made you doubt yourself. And he's like, no, I mean, though, like there was that one thing. And then he flashes back to the there is a hole in your mind guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, oh, okay. So there is a crack. Don't you want to know? Don't you want to know what happened? And he's like, you know what? I do want to know what happened. He finally is like, okay, yeah, I'm ready to see what happened. Because he may actually be worried that he did betray the human race.
I think regardless of the content of that time, Sinclair, just personality-wise, is more committed to the truth than to maintaining his convictions.
I think he is overall. I think in this one small thing, he would rather not know.
And that's why he hasn't.
Yeah.
He hasn't pushed it
I
yet.
think the pain of everything else is so great. Why would I want to dwell in that moment when it could just be something even more painful?
Yeah.
And we do get to see the scene again, and we add one more thing, which is honestly the most impactful emotional moment that they've added to this scene and the entire thing. And it is a floating empty helmet goes by his ship. Because humans are it's a meat grinder.
Yeah.
And there's parts of ships and parts of people, and it's gross and violent. And of course, he doesn't want to live in that moment, but he does go back and he remembers meeting the Grey Council, and he remembers being held captive and being tortured and being tied up in the council chamber, and they hold this triangle up in front of him and it glows. And then
stick a pin in that.
Yeah, you're gonna
put
want
it on your board.
You're gonna want to right there. And he's like, "Oh my God!" As soon as he remembers being free, and he remembers running over and pulling up somebody's hood, and he just goes.
He's reliving the memory, he says, "I know you."
He goes, "I know you. I know who you are. I know you." And this is when he gets shot. And I only have one question about this whole scene, which is why is there always a mesh ceiling to record down through as someone is being wheeled by on a gurney? This is not even the third time that I've seen somebody being wheeled by and they're like, "What's happening? Who are you people?" And the camera is panning along with them through what looks like a chain link fence.
I can come up with something.
I don't, that was a rhetorical question.
Oh, okay.
I just want everybody to know that that's a trope and we can probably be done with it. Meanwhile, in real life, he breaks free. He's finally bridged between.
Yeah, he's flexing his hand again.
And he pulls up and he breaks his restraints because Sinclair smash. He turns and punches
the chair.
But he looks over and the other guy's sitting next to him and he just goes, "Kaboo!" And Sinclair smashes the guy next to him. And then he gets up and the other knight comes running for him and he performs
Sinclair smashes him again.
He does. He knocks this guy out with one punch. But he's still stuck in that psychosis and he thinks he's still on the Minbari ship because he's like, "I got to get out of here. I got to get to my ship." Night 2 wakes up.
He's also drugged up.
Yeah.
To the point that he could hallucinate.
Right. Yeah, he is. He is hallucinating. And then night 2 or night 1, I guess, wakes up after he got Sinclair smashed, which he must be pretty hardy because that would have taken me out.
He got up.
Yeah.
Quick enough to chase him.
He punches so hard, he stumbles after he punches people.
Oh, yes.
Like,
when you're learning, fighting.
Yeah.
It's part of what you have to learn is like, if you're doing any kind of martial arts training.
Yeah.
When you throw a punch, you're supposed to maintain your balance.
Right. No, but it's like in Gattaca, where he's like, "How come you could always swim so far?"
I never hold back.
He's like, "I never left anything for the return trip."
Yeah. he fully commits to the punch.
Every time.
Every time.
That's why he can tear metal restraints and knock men out with single punches. Sinclair smash. So
I am no vanilla mortal.
But he does run across a security officer and she's like, "Commander, oh my God, Commander." And he shoots at her thinking she's Minbari.
Right.
And then
I think he hits her.
Well, no, he doesn't hit
shoulder?
her, but he calls it in. She calls it in. And then night 1 shoots her from behind.
Yeah.
And
so Rachel brought up, where'd they get the guns? They got guns through?
No,
we rationalized how they got guns.
They could have gotten Benson's gun and he could have then gotten.
When they snuck into Sinclair's apartment.
Yeah, they
could
could've
have
gotten
gotten
his
Sinclair's gun, and then when they killed Benson, they got Benson's gun.
Right.
So that's why they have 2 guns.
Right, because Sinclair is armed at this point. He has a gun.
And Night One also has a gun.
And then we end up
And they're
in the
both
Zocalo.
standard issue
The,
Babylon 5 security guns.
They have a name. And if you hadn't asked me their name, I think they're a PPK. They have a name. They're like anyway. They end up in the Zocalo, and all I could think was, there was a firefight. Because Sinclair shoots at Garibaldi. Garibaldi gets shot at by Night 2. Night 1. Garibaldi is shooting the Knight. Everybody's shooting at each other. A lot is happening. And Steven calls Garibaldi, and he's like, oh, hey, Sinclair might be delusional. He may shoot at you. And Garibaldi's like, thanks, noted. Already happening. Luckily, Delenn arrives and just walks up to Sinclair. Night 1 has been subdued. He's been shot at this point. And Garibaldi's hiding because Sinclair is still shooting at anything that moves. And Delenn pops out, and she's like, hey, buddy. It's okay
This
now.
reminds me of
Sun's going down, buddy.
This reminded me of the scene in Moana when she's walking up to
Oh,
Fiti.
yes. Yeah. I know who you are,
Yeah.
I think is what she says to her.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. But Sinclair goes, I know you. I know who you are. I know you. And Delenn's like, yeah, it's me, your buddy Delenn. I'm Ambassador. I'm Ambassador Delenn. This is
Wink.
when Lanier needs to pop out from behind and be like, Satai Delenn, the Grey Council. And he's like, no, I know you. Like, I know you. And she looks really worried for a minute. Like, no, you don't.
And
you don't know me.
I think to add to the context of this, of why Delenn would actually be afraid, back in the simulation, Sinclair's talking about, after he's telling the guy, like, you weren't there, and he says for years after the war, he had to resist the urge to choke to death every Minbari that he saw in person.
Yeah. Yeah, the rage that he felt against the Minbari for what they did. It had to feel, I mean, we talked about it in the episode with Malcolm where he's like, that victory tasted like ashes. And it probably kind of did because they were enacting a policy of genocide against the entire human race. Yeah. They were fully prepared and well on the way to destroying every man, woman, and child.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were like, oops, our bad. We surrender. And so ultimately, human race kind of won in that we got to keep existing, but it was a hollow surrender. We didn't actually beat them, so it's not like we could come back with terms or anything and be like, okay, we only accept your surrender if we were just like, fucking thank you.
There was no agency involved.
There was no, and there was no real resolution. There was no real catharsis to the victory because they still killed billions of humans.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they got to just be like, oh, no problem. Our foul, party foul, no problem. Sorry. Yeah. Oops. Yeah. Maybe try to not do the thing that set off the war again. Okay, cool. See you later. Bye. And so there was no real relief, I think. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, it feels terrible because they surrendered, but like, why?
Yeah, there was no closure.
There was no closure. So, of course, it was hard to let go of that feeling of animosity because there was no follow-up of, but at least we beat them because we were beaten, not the other way around.
Right.
But she does look worried because, there's consequences for him realizing what happened because he doesn't know what he knows, but he knows a lot. And if he ever realized what he actually has in his head, it would be a problem.
Yeah.
And we flash back to him remembering seeing who was under the hood when he lifts up that hood, and it's Delenn. And she has this silver triangle drawn on her forehead. And then Sinclair raises the gun and shoots it, but he shoots the knight who's gotten up behind Delenn.
Yeah.
And Delenn just goes, welcome home. Like, phew, thanks, you didn't shoot me. Thank God. And then Sinclair wakes up in the medical bay, And we find out that it's been 24 hours. That's how long it took to get all those drugs out of his system. And Earth has exercised their right to jurisdiction and is taking Night 2 back.
Yep.
So that he can stand trial on Earth. And Garibaldi gets a moment to express his conspiracy theory, which is like, we think these dudes are working for this clandestine organization. It may even be an Earth government, and that may be why they're bringing him back, because if he stood trial here, things may come out that they don't want to come out.
Yeah.
And Sinclair's like, cool, well, I want to go talk to the guy that I didn't kill. The other guy.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I'm so sorry, but you literally Sinclair smashed all of his memories out of his head. He's got nothing. So he goes to talk to him and he's like, you didn't tell me your name. You didn't tell me anything. And the guy's like, yeah, I don't remember. I don't remember anything. And Garibaldi's like, well, Commander, we got to go. Although I do love the moment where he's like, he wants to talk to him alone. And they're like, okay. And they all take like a step back. He's not alone though. Like everyone's still standing there, but it's fine. And the guy's like, Commander Sinclair? There's something in my mind and it's telling me maybe we're still in there. Maybe you're still in there. And I feel like this would have a lot of, like, this would be a ooh moment if we had a spinning top thing. If we had him going back and finding his communicator in his drawer after Garibaldi grabbed his communicator.
Yeah.
If we had one moment of discontinuity where you were like, oh, hold up. That doesn't make sense.
Right.
So to leave us in that, ooh, are they still in the simulation? You know, the spinning top from Inception.
Yeah. Yeah. Some piece of evidence in what is ostensibly the real world.
Yeah.
That, oh, wait, maybe.
Yeah, but they don't. They just leave it with that. And then they're like, okay, so that guy's crazy. Yeah, that guy's crazy. It's fine. And then Sinclair goes to talk to Delenn to thank her because he's like, you know, it's kind of weird that seeing you was the only thing that snapped me out of that. And she's like, yeah, it's really weird. So out of curiosity, what do you remember about the things that they were asking you?
Oh, nothing.
And he's like, yeah, nothing.
I remember nothing.
You know, there are two reasons why people lie.
Everybody lies.
Everybody lies. The innocent man lies because he doesn't want to be found. He doesn't want to be found guilty of something he didn't do. And a guilty man lies because there's something he doesn't want you to find out. So which is Sinclair doing? Is he guilty or innocent? I guess. He doesn't want Delenn to know that he knows because he doesn't know the full story. He doesn't know the consequences of the knowledge.
Yep. He doesn't want, yeah. He doesn't know what fucking around he did. So he doesn't want to find out about it.
He doesn't want to find out till he knows why he's finding out.
Yeah.
And then he leaves, and it's a good thing he lied because this gray council guy, a blind gray council guy, pops out. And he's like, he can never know what happened. And if we ever find out that he knows, you need to go ahead and kill him. And Delenn's like, I mean, okay. Like, I don't want to, but I get it. And then he goes back. Sinclair goes back to his room and has a personal log entry where he's like, personal log, start date, whatever. And he recounts his memories. And then he's like, was that the Grey Council? Maybe. Was Delenn there? What was she doing there? What is it that they don't want me to remember? I need to find out. And like, great. But also, how private are your personal logs? If you're a public official, are those personal logs technically like Freedom of Information Act? Can you like request those?
That's actually a very good question.
Yeah, because
you could make them extremely secure.
Yeah, I mean, you could make them secure in that nobody could hack into them, but can they be requested? Is it like the presidential library where everything that they touch during their presidency gets put in the library?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think I would write this shit down, or I'd have it on a little recorder, like an isolated recorder.
Something that's not a piece of the Babylon 5 systems.
Especially knowing that there could be an element of the Earth government that is out to get you.
Right.
So maybe don't record your thoughts on government hardware, you know.
Right.
Anyway, that's the end of that episode. That's a very focused episode because it's a very important episode because we are advancing the Sinclair plot, which we haven't done in a really long time.
Right.
And everything in there you need to remember, even the newspaper headlines.
Well, I don't think you need to remember the newspaper headlines, but just appreciate the planning that they were executing Like the level of story
Yeah.
planning that went into this, and like years before we see what happens with those headlines,
Yeah.
like there were
Seeds.
clues being
Seeds.
dropped. Yeah.
I guess JMS holds the record, but he received an award or a recognition for being one of the first people to write an entire season, as he was the only writer. He wrote an entire one of the seasons.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's other writers,
Mm-hmm.
but he wrote one of the seasons is entirely him.
Yeah.
Which I think is really cool. And it's Babylon 5's strength. It's why
Mm-hmm.
it's why we still love it. It's why we have this podcast about it. And this was an important moment where we see the level of planning that is going into what is happening.
Mm-hmm.
Because now we're going to have this plot arc where we're trying to figure out, because we haven't really questioned Sinclair. Why is he there? What happened in those 24 hours? What hole is in his mind? We knew that Delenn is Satai Delenn,
Mm-hmm.
but we didn't know what that means. We still kind of don't.
Yeah.
There's a lot of building blocks here. There's a lot of pieces, a lot of stuff put on our plate that we now have the opportunity to figure out why it's all there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was a good episode. I needed that after the Home Guard episode.
Yeah.
And as much as we complain about Garibaldi, it's lies. We love Garibaldi and we're going to love him again. It's just, some things age well. Some things you have to remain cognizant of the context. And the context for viewers in 1990 was not the same. You're not going online. Well, they were actually. That's a lie. I was about to say you're not going online and hashing these theories out.
Right.
Whatever. It's okay. You just have to. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's fine.
It was the beginning of that kind of community around a piece of media.
And again, we're thinking pre-2001 level of security. It's really, really hard for me to contextualize for people who were not alive and didn't exist in the world before 2001, how we did not have there was not
Security
the level
checks.
of suspicion. Yeah. There just really wasn't. I would never have worried that a suspicious package was a bomb, ever. Yeah. You just didn't. It didn't even occur to you.
Right.
Did it happen? Sure, it was happening. There was not the level of awareness.
Right. Especially not in America.
Yeah, especially not in America. Yeah. And that now we're looking back at, 25 years of surveillance state.
Yeah.
Going back and being like, well, why didn't you have cameras? Why didn't you look at the logs? Why didn't you know what was happening?
Mm-hmm.
And they just didn't. It was just different. And so I think we'll leave it there. That feels like a good spot.
Yeah.
Because we live for the one.
We die for the one.
Until next time, friends.
Bye.
Computer. Personal log entry. 2,300 hours. I remember. I was taken inside a Minbari cruiser. Interrogated. Tortured. Was that the Grey Council? Maybe. Before they surrendered, they must have blanked my memory and let me go. And Delenn, what was she doing there? What is it they don't want me to remember? I have to find out. I have to.